What's happening, people? Welcome back to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. Today, I get to sit down and chat with my friend Angelo Nicolosi, the assistant baseball coach at Valdosta State. Angelo has dedicated his life to baseball, which includes coaching on the college level, as well as a stint as a talent scout for the LA Dodgers. I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation where we discuss Angelo going from a student athlete who didn't feel he had the grades and was told he didn't have the grades to make it on the next level to a coach and being in some of the most high-level rooms in baseball. So I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation. And as always, thank you for listening to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. So today we are bringing you another conversation with my friend, Mr. Angelo Nicolosi, and it's been quite some time since me and Angelo have talked. I think the first piece of content that came out from this collaboration was back in about 2013 when I was writing an article for the hometown newspaper. And, you know, you just said it, you know, FaceTime wasn't a thing. Cell phones weren't really much of a thing back then. And, you know, at least to do videos and stuff like that. And now we can. So I'm glad we can hop on and get you on here. I was happy that you reached out and said, hey, when are you going to get me on there? And let's make it happen 2 weeks later. And here we are. Yep. So before we get started, I want to kind of give you the floor, just kind of tell the audience kind of who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about you, Angelo.
Once again, thank you for having me, Mr. Holmes. It's always a treat when we get to shoot the breeze about hometown stuff because we are both in totally different areas of the world now. My crash course is I grew up in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, and I did my traveling. I started going to college at St. Thomas University in a crazy, weird, roundabout roller coaster way, how we all end up in athletics in some way, shape, or form. I got into coaching and started literally from the bottom and worked myself up. I was at a dormant program at Tallahassee Community College. Really built a really solid foundation for kids, not only on the field, off the field, academics and everything else. And that's really taken me to where I have gone and am today. Went to another junior college shortly after that for a short span. Had a couple years in the scouting and front office with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And as crazy things happen, changes happen, and you get smacked in the head and end up right back where you started. So I'm back in college baseball, and I've been a nationally ranked team for the last few years now. I think this year I got my 5-year appreciation award, I think, for being there for 5 years. And it's been crazy, man. You never think of what the future can hold until some unfortunate things happen. And that's where I'm at. So I've moved up to being the recruiting coordinator and associate head coach at Valdosta State University. And who knows where the next step is, but we're still rocking and rolling and still recruiting. And with the portal and all these other changes, as you mentioned, with FaceTime and live streaming and all these other things, recruiting, like the rest of the world, has taken on a new world, so to speak. It's gotten a little hairy. You really don't have any off time, how recruiting used to be, not only with pro scouting, but college recruiting. It's basically turned into 24/7, 365-day year window, so to speak. I mean, even when you're not, you're still doing homework and research on student athletes and families and where they come from and everything else. You just never want to be, blown away with information you don't know that you should when you talk to someone, not only a parent, but a student athlete. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. So what was it, you went through your path, but what was it about baseball that you really took to? Everybody has their sport and they figure out, this is where I belong. What was it about baseball? And you were a catcher as well. What was it about being behind the plate that it was just like, this is where I belong?
I don't know if I tell people, I don't know if I still belong there. I mean, there's days I sit and scratch my head and say, how did I end up in this career? I told you this years ago, and I'll repeat myself to the whole national crowd. I was a terrible player. I went to St. Thomas University, which was a NAIA powerhouse, and truth be told, I ended up there because a teacher in my hometown school told me that I wasn't smart enough to go to college and was never going to be a part of a team, and it just wasn't going to happen, and that wasn't structured for me. Well, like other people, I get motivated. I love being told no. So we're sitting out, I'll never forget it, at in the city of Opelika in Miami Gardens, Florida. Now they changed names, but long story short, little St. Thomas University. We're sitting next to a lake, and a buddy of mine who was really, really good was throwing bullpens, and he asked if I wanted to catch him, so I did. And man, I was so bad. I was so bad. These guys are hitting bombs. These guys are hitting home runs far as the human eye can see, and I'm getting. I'm not hitting balls out of the cage. It's bad. But my head coach said, "Look, man, I need a guy. You're from New Jersey." He said, "You're the only non-Cuban on my baseball team at that time." And he said, "Look, you're a good student. You really have busted your neck. I've looked at your transcripts, and coming in here, you really made a jump. I had to take some summer classes to get into that school, and it all worked out. He really took me under his wing, and the rest was history." So when that happened, it's kind of funny. The team that we always hated. It's just so funny how the world works. Ryan, the coach I couldn't stand was the head coach at Embry-Riddle University, and we couldn't stand him because only one of two teams went to the World Series. Well, prior to me arriving at St. Thomas University, they went like 3 or 4 years in a row. Well, I show up, and I'm like the good luck charm. We never went again. But the team that went all the time was the guy that years later I am now coaching for or coaching with now. And it's just crazy. Like when he interviewed me, he said, how's this feel? I said, it's really weird. And he said, why? I said, I've never really appreciated an opportunity as much as I hated one. And he said, well, what's wrong with this school? I said, Coach, I said, the school is great. You run a great program. I know it hasn't been what you'd expected to be in the last few years prior to my arrival. But I said, we hated you. He said, why do you hate me? I said, because as soon as I got to college, you guys went to the World Series every year. We didn't go because you were our enemy. And he laughed and we joked around and it was a good conversation. But no, man, everything has gone really, really well. After I got done coaching there, playing there, I never wanted to get into baseball, honest to God. I had a short little internship for a few months at a Merrill Lynch branch, I guess, so to speak, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and doing odds and end jobs here, just make a couple bucks. And I'll never forget it. The guy that ran that branch sat me down. He was a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan. And I feel bad I never maintained a relationship because I followed his career and he's moved up the Merrill Lynch chain. And he said, shut the door. And he said, I've never had a guy that had so much common sense in my life. They give you these things, like if you hit the lottery or if you did something else and you had all this money, like who would you go after? What would be the first thing you'd purchase? What would you do? What wouldn't you do? What would you buy? What wouldn't you buy? And it just goes down to a lot of trivial things. And the math test is piece of cake. The psychological test is really what trickled his mind, so to speak. And he said, I've never had a guy answer this borderline perfectly. There's no right and wrong answer, but in their module, Ryan, like how they want people to think when you work for them, he said I was just off the charts. And he said, let's go out to lunch tomorrow. So we did. And we started talking about family. We started talking, my parents, as you know, have a business in the Lehigh Valley. And he just asked me a bunch of different things. And long story short, he said, I got to be honest with you. He said, I love you, man. You're exactly what I want. But he said, I think your skill set's to get back into baseball. So then I went back to talk to my head coach. I didn't know where to go. And I went back and talked to him. And he got me a full-time job to work in the mailroom. I was making really good money. But we couldn't travel with the team. We could only be on home games, working with them, and we'd work at practice. So we adjusted my schedule. My old boss in the mailroom was great. He worked with it. Everything rocked and rolled. And that's how I got my start. And then after I achieved my master's degree years later, it took me about 3 or 4 years because with practices and working in other jobs and making money and such like that, you can't knock out a master's degree as fast as you can an undergraduate degree as far as the load of classes. 3 classes is a bunch, and I was taking 2, and it was a lot. So anyhow, we finished it up, and then there was an opportunity to go to Tallahassee Community College, and my head coach told me, Ange, look, you ain't gonna make a lot of money. Did you save up a lot? And I'll never forget, I told everybody, and it's true, I saved up $20,000, lived very, very frugally. I knew it was going to be a tough industry to get into, and still is. And that's how it all got started. And I worked there for about 2.5, 3 years, being a volunteer assistant. And I didn't exactly want that, but I knew leaving my area, you went to a country part of the Panhandle. There aren't a bunch of Latins, leaving New Jersey, as you know, from where you and I are from, Lehigh Valley. It's changed a lot. There's a Latin population. There's a lot of different diversity in the area now. And we grew up with that. Some of the things that I've been fortunate and unfortunate to experience, whether good, bad, or indifferent, really realize how spoiled you and I were growing up because we didn't deal with this stuff that goes on today. Like, we were very fortunate. Like, everybody knew everybody, and if you didn't like them, you could get along. Like this, you turn on the news, and you always see people hating each other, and hate's a very strong word. And I just think what's made me a coach is where I've come from, both in the business and being in the area and location that we have, you know, grew up with. And I feel very spoiled. I really do, because how we grew up, I see other kids and student athletes that I coach and mold and try to help out. It's, you start talking the first couple times, Ryan, and they look at you like there's something wrong with us. And it's like, we're just trying to get everybody to get along. And if you're all on the same page, it makes life a lot easier. I mean, pulling on one end of the rope is a heck of a lot easier than pulling on two sides, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. So, and you mentioned it, the family business, and I remember it was a couple years ago there was an article about you coming home, and whenever you come home, you go work for the family
Yeah.
business, right? And this was, I think, back during your Dodger days, right? And they're like, he's in MLB parks, but when he's home, he's a family guy.
That's
And
it.
you talk about how we grew up, and right, and it's been really foundational for you. You know what what is it about family and the family that you grew up in that translates very easily for you into coaching and bringing that cohesion that you do when you're a coach or a recruiter?
You know, I just I just hung out with a guy when we were down at the regionals and we lost. And he's very involved in the New York Yankees and everything else. And he's since parted ways and he's been out of it. And he and I talked about this. You know, you treat everything 100%. You go balls to the wall. And if you're not going to do something right, then just don't do it at all. And as far as family and baseball and the pizza world and everything else, Ryan, it, to me, it's all the same. I mean, look, you treat it like it's a business. And it bothers me when people are like, well, you know, I need to spend some more time with my family and stuff like that. Look, life's tough. People have kids, people get married, people get divorced, people they go through these things. Dad, I tell everyone all the time, you want to be Italian, it's real simple. You don't see your family and enjoy yourselves unless it's a religious function, if it's a wedding or if it's a funeral. And it's funny because at the end of the day, that's when everyone gets along and we all hug and cry and drink and we all talk to each other and they're like, look, let's get together. And the next time you get together is either at a wedding or a funeral or a religious function. So it's funny. Look, you know this from being in the area, but for the viewers that don't know, we're open 5 days a year. We're closed, and it's family time, and sometimes it gets to be tough. And my mother and father had 4 kids, and they were always going in different directions. And I think with baseball, it's the same thing. Look, man, there's not one baseball player, not one baseball front office, not one baseball scout. Scouting probably is more harder than anything else because you're always in a different city if you're on the amateur side, one here, one there, and you have to come and go all the time. Now, that world has changed a little bit for analytics and statistical purposes. But look, you still got to freeze, you still got to sweat your tail off, and you still basically have to watch a player play. When it's time to spend family time, you spend family time. And look, we have great employees, but it's really funny because when I come home, it's like whether I'm working or not, it's like I am. Like you're still offering a helping hand. As a matter of fact, I just walked in today just to say hi and have a cup of espresso with a couple of guys in the back. They're like, "Hey, you coming in tonight? Like, we need to catch up. We got to clean some stuff and do some different things." And I said, "Yeah, sure, man. Like, it's no problem." I was like, "My boy Ryan just invited me to go on his podcast, so it's gonna be all over the place." And I said, "I'll be in later." So that's that. I mean, look, your job's never done, and even in your industry, and I mentioned it before when you're recruiting, right? You have an upper hand in this conversation because you know my family, you know me, you know my sister, you know where we came from. And I think in your family with your genes and where you came from, it's kind of the same, right? Like you want to do your homework and know what you're dealing with before you deal with it. Surprises, more times than not, in your industry and my industry, are not fun. They're not exciting. Like you want to know, okay, what's going to happen? Like I don't want to be like, oh my god, I didn't realize this kid we were recruiting just went to jail and he got caught for drugs, but we're going to give him an opportunity and we didn't even know about that. Like you have to know, like you don't want to do an interview with a guy that just lost his job and ask him how great it is, and then you find out, oh man, I'm asking him all these questions about the job. He just got fired a week ago. Like it makes you look stupid. So, I mean, you take the good with the bad, man. I mean, family's family, and no matter what, and I'm sure your family always told you this, Ryan. You can pick and choose your friends. You can pick and choose jobs, but your family, whether you like them, love them, or hate them, it don't matter. You're stuck with them, and that's what keeps you together.
Yeah. So now with the current position and being, coming off kind of, I mean, you're into the off season now, but you said the job's never
No,
done, right? So what's the next stage of your job look like? You're home right
Home
now.
right now. This phone is
We're
glued
kind
to
of
me, literally.
somewhat relaxed, but what's
This phone is
next?
glued to me at this point of the
Yeah,
year.
what's
So,
next?
how it works with our school and why I love it so much is because we are a very heavy transfer school. Not to say you never say never, because one of our
Hmm.
better players this year is our starting catcher who's been on pro radars, and to be drafted out of a Division II school, NAIA school, D3 school, or even junior college for that matter. Major League Baseball has changed. They're on a 20-round draft, which more or less is 600 picks. So you have to have a skill set that stands out better than everybody else. Well, for all the college people out there that are college crazy in football and basketball and every sport, baseball included, there's this thing called the portal. And I can't stand it because as soon as the
Yeah.
kid goes on that portal, boy, that phone's ringing, that email's getting shut off, things are happening, and everything else. In the recruiting world, it's not the way it was, Ryan, when you and I grew up, okay? If your father, your uncle, my father, my uncle shook someone's hand and said, hey, my son's coming to your school, your educational institution, hey, it's a done deal. It's over. And obviously, the whole business model has changed in the world, right? If you go buy a house and I shake your hand and you're a real estate agent, it's done. Well, you found out that you lowballed the offer, and someone down the street said, "Hey, I'm going to offer you extra $100,000 for that house." Hey, what's your handshake worth now? You just wrote up a contract and he signed it. I didn't, and the world's not exactly what it used to be. However, in the portal situation now, it's
Hmm.
basically for the people that aren't familiar with it. Imagine pro sports having every single kid a free agent deal in pro sports every single year. Now, every kid doesn't go on the portal, but that's where this year gets a little bit difficult because, or the years now, because in the summertime, the NCAA has allowed you to have a kid that if he chooses to leave a school, he doesn't have to sit out a year and or drop down necessarily to a lower classification. He can go anywhere. So a kid could go to Rutgers, a kid could go to Valdosta State,
Hmm.
a kid could go to Pitt, Miami, wherever he wants to go, if he has that eligibility to go to do that. Now, grades are a part of it too. If they're not as smart or if they've done something bad in the classroom, that changes things. But if everyone's on a clean slate, they're able to go wherever they want. So I'm not gonna lie, I prefer to have the kids all fall. I'd like to mold them. I'd like to know our system and get a true sense of how we do things. Because, right, they're not going to know it right away. They come in 3-4 months in the fall, from lifting, from doing agility work to, our practice schedules, both individually and team practice schedules. You want to start the spring off. All right, look, we're going to inter squad. We're going to strap it on. We're going to get ready to go. And February 1st, we want everyone to know our system. However, when you get to Ryan Holmes out of the University of Miami and you're a stud and you've proven yourself and you can fly and you can hit and you can do it all, and then you get a scout calling you and say, hey, my guy's a pro guy and he's got athletic genes. If there's a need, you take that guy. And then basically it's a crash course and you kind of in 3 weeks make up for 3 or 4 months that they weren't there. So that's what this time of the year is for. Obviously, there's allotted money that we save and put aside for that guy. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But it is a business, Ryan. And although college sports, no matter what anyone says, aren't about wins and losses, I mean, that's what you get to keep your job, and that's what you have to do to continue to strive in this industry. Because at the end of the day, it's what have you done for me lately. Grades are important. Graduation rates are important.
Hmm.
Everything is important. I'm not saying it's not, because if you're not eligible, you can't play. But I hate to say it, they don't offer you contracts based on a kid's GPA. They basically on what's your win loss percentage. And part of my job, and I've talked to our head guy about it, and he trusts me. And there's a trust, right? In business, if I work for you and you trust me with money, or if you trust me locking the business up at night, that's a trust. I mean, you just don't start working and say, "Oh, here's the key to the business." No one does that. But we've built a very good trust, me and my head coach, and it works out like this. Obviously, you always stress the now, right? We just went to a regional. We went 0-2. That's not exactly how we drew that one up. It happens. It's baseball. But I worry about the next year. Everyone else's job is, worrying about now. And if we feel like there's a need, we'll sit amongst the coaching staff and say, hey, we need a catcher. We need another pitcher. We need something. And Brian, that's how it works. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but
Hmm.
you shoot for the stars, and then you kind of just adjust to what you have next.
Yeah. So you talked about the scouts calling.
Yes.
You were a scout, right? And you were in, my favorite baseball team, the Dodgers. You know that, and we've talked about that plenty of times where I said I was super jealous to see, you get to work with an organization that I love, right? But how much did you take from your years as a scout? Also, what's it like being an MLB scout? But what did you take from those years into recruiting and being the recruiting coordinator now at Valdosta
I
State?
like to believe that I'm the hardest working guy and no one outworks me. However, when I got to Major League Baseball, what helped me the most, and look, those weren't exactly glorious years, the short time that I was there. Um, Look, I mean, no one's ever happy getting divorced, right? So I consider that opportunity that it ended like a divorce. Um, a bunch of new people came in, and look, they're running the business too, right? So you have to understand that they're doing things their way. They want their people, and I was in a really strange situation. They brought me in under an old regime, and the new regime came in, and it was, look, you're not one of our guys, and that's it. And really stunk at the time. I mean, I basically uprooted and took everything out there, and it didn't work out. And like life, Ryan, you put one foot in front of the other and go from there. What I will tell you is that I became an anal OCD, the highest version of that as possible as far as being organized. I watched the meetings. I saw them put together a draft board. Now things have changed. It was on a 40-round draft, so it's around like 1,200 picks. That's a lot of baseball players you got to watch, and they break it up in the whole country. And I saw how they went after it. I saw how they negotiated. I saw how the scouts would lobby for a player. If you start throwing numbers out based off of their athletic skill set, you better not be wrong. For the viewers out there, if you say a kid's got 70 or 80 power and he's a college bat, that kid better have 25 home runs. I mean, that kid better be knocking balls out of the yard. You can't lie to people. I mean, look, the internet's good for this kind of stuff, that you see statistics as far as what they've done. But more importantly, I mean, you can't say a kid hit 2 home runs, he's got 80 power. That's impossible. I mean, like you're talking 80, you're talking like a Bryce Harper, you're talking about an Aaron Judge or something of that nature. Like you're playing with money here. I mean, it's not your money, it's house money. But look, it's like Vegas. The house always wins. I mean, if you're not bringing that caliber talent to the table, you're either getting fired or we're sitting down, or you better have a good excuse. Someone may have got hurt. Something happened. The kid got mono. He broke his leg. Obviously, there's certain circumstances for everything, right? But yeah, it was a major eye-opening experience for me. And look, man, I'm not gonna tell you. I mean, anyone that says they don't have sour grapes when you get a job that you love is lying. But I just look at it as, you treat the glass like it's always half full. And I feel that I stole information and learned a heck more than what I've already known, but on a much higher scale. It's more intense. I mean, anyone that's never sat in a draft room, I mean, it's hot and heavy. Like, I mean, you got all these names on this board, and some guy's going to pick here, some guy's going to pick there, but you really don't know, and you don't know what they're doing. It's like a card game. I mean, you're playing poker. I mean, you don't know what is in your hand. I don't know what's in your hand. You're trying to beat me. I'm trying to beat you. I'm trying to bluff you, and I don't have the card, but then I do have the card. Like, you come out and, the media is a little bit dangerous. Obviously, in your situation, there's rats out there. They like to squeal and tell you what's going on. There's people you don't want in those offices, because if they do anything, I mean, Ryan, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, for 2 or 3 weeks prior to that draft, I mean, it's hot and heavy. It really, really is. And, you just got to make sure you keep your mouth shut, and it's confidential information. And, they may like what you have to say, they may not. But at the end of the day, that is like a jail cell. And you do not go to you do not go to anybody with anything. You keep it all to yourself. And that's why they literally keep you in that room forever and lock you in there, and they'll feed you, and you'll eat and drink and everything else in there. And, you're going to have your 1,000,000 bottles of water, and you're going to have your food selection of whatever you want. But it's, in history, it's like with the meetings that were sealed and everything, with the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and all their stuff. Imagine every year for 3 weeks, you're just you go in there in the morning and drink your coffee, and they're leaving you in there like sardines. And at the end of the night, you go and you don't want to do anything. You don't want to go out to eat. You get back to your hotel, take a shower. I mean, you turn on the TV and you only want to watch what you're watching. You just pass out. Like, I mean, it's very, very intense.
Yeah, it sounds like it is, and it's it's tough to be in rooms like that and not just be a sponge and soak all of that up. How much of that you went through in those 3 weeks, or just being a scout, did you take with you now as an assistant
A
coach?
ton, and I'll tell you why. One of the smartest baseball minds that I ever got a chance to meet while I was with the Dodgers. Believe it or not, this is funny because I'm Italian and you're from Pennsylvania. I got a chance to meet Tommy Lasorda on more occasions than you can imagine, and most of it was all food related, not just Italian either. And Tommy was an interesting guy, and God bless his heart, he was a peach, and he was talking to me, and he showed me some stuff because his family originated, a lot of people don't know this, from Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and being from the Lehigh Valley as we are, I mean, that's not too far from us. And he really took me under his wing. He was really cool. He took me out and just showed me some stuff. And at that point, his juice was gone with the organization. But he always looked for like one or two guys to pick on. And he found out I was Italian, and he sees a skinny little guy and takes me out to whatchamacallit, because I still go to the gym and stuff. And he'd always yell at me because I didn't eat enough. And my first restaurant that I ever went to with him was at Buca di Beppo, and it's funny because we really don't go there as a family. And he basically ordered everything off the menu, and he goes, "We're gonna have a talk." I was like, "All right." And it's me, him, and a couple other people. We're talking about the draft and everything else. And what I gathered out of that conversation, other than at the time I was 185 pounds and still am, is that on top of putting weight on to do this business, you have to understand, kid, loud and clear. You have 3 or 4 really good drafts, it'll change your life. And I will tell you, taking that knowledge right there into recruiting, if you get 2 or 3 incredible kids every single year, at least at my level, you're going to the postseason. And it's funny because every year I've been there, I've had a 400 hitter. I've had, if not an All-American, someone that was in the conversation, or 1 or 2 guys that have absolutely dominated at their position to the point where, realistically, we probably shouldn't have got them. I just hustled my tail off in between calls and text messages and in-house visits and going out to eat and things of that nature. Ryan, you don't realize 1 or 2 guys don't make a baseball team. 1 or 2 guys don't make a basketball team. But I can promise you right now, no matter what the sport is, as long as it's a team sport, those 1 or 2 guys could change your life. They just have to be the right guys. And I'm obsessed with basketball. I'm a big basketball nut, huge Pat Riley fan. I've seen the Dwayne Wades when I was down in Miami, and I grew up like you did watching Michael Jordan. And everybody that has watched, The Last Dance, I think it's so valuable in that series when he talks about when he was first there and the coaches that they brought in. And they talk about, man, he'd be scoring 40, 50 points. He was on fire. Like when he started the whole Jordan trend with the sneakers, and then he started winning, and he broke his ankle somewhere. I think it was in like Detroit. And then they brought him back, and they had him on minutes. And the toughest part for him was, and he says it, and it's a learning experience for all of us. Jerry Krause tells him, he goes, basically, there's a 10% chance you'll never play ever again. And then he asks him, he goes, there's a 9% chance you'll be okay. But he said, this game doesn't mean nothing. And they knew they weren't going to win the championship that year. And he says, well, let me tell you like this. He goes, there's a chance you're going to die in a bottle of Tylenol or Advil pills or something like that. He goes, but there's a really good chance you'll take 1 or 2 and you'll be fine. He goes, well, am I going to win the game if I take the right ones? So it's like, he had to realize that a little bit less now may mean a little bit more later. And with those kids, the toughest part, and it's usually Division I transfer kids, the kids that are the best at their craft, they come to us, they want to be the man. They want to get drafted. But what they don't understand is this. With success comes winning. So if your personal success doesn't come in a winning product, you're not going to continue to play later on in the season. So if you finish the regular season and a scout can't see you, when are they going to see you? They're not. So, it's a good example or not, but I mean, it was funny, and obviously, the history with the Bulls are what they are. They end up going on a tear, and like Golden State now, and I think Steve Kerr's a big part of that. He tells his guys, look, man, I mean, it's not about specifically you as an individual, but us as a team. Your individual accolades are very, very valuable and everything else, but after it's all said and done, more success comes the more you continue to play, and that's team success that has to come before everything else. The 400 guy is going to hit 400. The 100 strikeout guy is going to strike out 100. But at the end of the day, and it all goes back down to quality of your nucleus, your team. You get a couple guys. I mean, your Dodgers, as much as I am not a fan anymore of Los Angeles, but they, look, when Tommy was still coaching there, and for a while they changed it too. I mean, they had the Rookie of the Year for like 4 or 5 years in a row. And there's a lot that goes into this. People have given Kershaw garbage about how he wasn't the man in the postseason. Look, there was a lot of bad luck for those Dodgers too, but I hate to tell you, you have to battle, Ryan, is you have to get to the postseason. You can't win a ring unless you get there. So the toughest part is you have to get there. Then once you get there, you have to play hot. You got to play smart. You got to play together and everything else. And the Dodgers had a lot of bad luck. And I know my man Stephen A. Smith still comes out and says they haven't won a World Series on a 162 game schedule, which is very true. But look, I mean, the Lakers, they haven't won one in a regular season. That's gone the whole distance too, since my man Kobe has been gone. And it is what it is. But understand, you still have to get there, and that's the most important thing.
Hmm. So you just said that you just got into town last night, late flight, everything else, but you're coming off a regional that you guys went 0-2. What's the message to your team when that happens?
Well, it's tough. We've probably had our best team we've had in a long time, and our head coach, everyone's going to do things a little bit differently, but I admire how he handled that, and I was ticked. A couple different things didn't bounce our way, and it's so fast. People don't realize pro sports. There's a little bit more duration. There's a lot more money in pro sports than there is in college. Um, he told every one of them, he goes, "I love every one of you guys." He said, and we lost the conference championship in the finals. We were down, I think, by 6 or 7 runs. They came back and tied it, and we had a base running error that kind of costed us late, and we should have won the conference championship, which we didn't. We went down to the regional. It was really hot. We came out there on fire. You go down 8-0 in the first inning, Ryan. I mean, that's not exactly how you drew that one up. Our kids come back. I think they scored 5 or 6, and we were really proud of them. And me and the other coach are sitting in the dugout, and we're like, man, these guys are lined up. They're fired up. Like, we're going to do it. And Rollins College out of Winter Park, Florida, I tip my hat to them. Sometimes, Ryan, the toughest thing you got to do is just say lost. And we did. And unfortunately, they just kept beating the snot out of us, and they just kept fighting back, and they did deserve to win it, and they did. And our head coach told every one of them after the second game we lost, which was a 5-4 loss, sometimes it just happens. You just got to tip your hat. They did a couple more things right than we did, and unfortunately, that's why the outcome was the way that it was. And he told every one of them he loved them. He told every one of them, you're not going to win at everything in life. And as unfortunate as this feels right now, I feel the pain just as much as you guys do. You guys are going to enjoy your summer, and this one's going to sit inside for a long time. And there's not many times you actually feel the same exact thing as coaches. I mean, some coaches agree, some coaches disagree, but we all went back to the hotel, and we all just kind of sat and stared at the ceiling. We're like, it just happened. And it is what it is. But, you got to understand, I mean, as a student athlete, they have to go to school. They're on a lifting program. They're always under the microscope. As much as social media is a great thing, it's a little dangerous. Then you make sure they do the right thing. If something goes wrong and you're the guy that gets cut, you're going to go out of your way to kind of hurt another guy that's better than you. And jealousy is a terrible thing that we all have to deal with in life and in college sports. And they put so much time. And I've always told our team, and our team has related it back to me. Look, everyone has a meltdown. Everyone gets pissed, but you are a family. And like I told you before, you can't pick and choose your friends, but you can pick and choose your family. For those 4 months that you play a baseball season, Ryan, you are a family. You win together, enjoy all the laughs. You lose and enjoy all the tears together. And as unfortunate as it is, you get back on that bus and you go back together. So you mourn together, you laugh together, you cry together, you bleed together, you sweat together. And I thought that was, I mean, you couldn't be said any better. I mean, what are you going to tell the kids? You all stink? I mean, yeah, I get it. We lost. I mean, it happens. I mean, but we got a really good nucleus coming back. We had a really good academic year. There's a lot of things that the kids have to hang their hats on. I mean, we're tough at home. I mean, this is the first year we broke a streak this year. It wasn't a good streak, but we hadn't lost a midweek baseball game in about 2.5 years till this year. And both games we deserve to lose. I'm not going to lie. The first game we lost to Georgia College. I think we made 7 or 8 errors, and they only acclimated 5 of them towards the stats, but we made more. And we only lost 5-4. We should have lost 20-0. But errors came back and haunted us there. And then we played them again, and we did the same thing, lost 5-4 up at their place. We had the bases loaded both times in the final 3 innings and just couldn't score runs. So, I mean, we beat ourselves, but I think that was a wake-up call at that point in time because our players really they were good. They're physical. They're put together. I mean, they hate losing more than they want to win, which is a good thing to have. But, Ryan, even if you win the whole thing, every season has to come to an end. And unfortunately, it didn't end the way we wanted to. But,
Hmm.
go back and get them again next year.
Yeah, yeah. So when do you head back to Valdosta, and when's the next season really truly start? I know it never ends for you, but when
Well,
does
I
it
go back
really
to
truly
school
start again?
as soon as school starts because I teach. So at Valdosta State, the teaching thing is very heavily involved in our baseball thing. Our baseball, what's the word I'm
Hmm.
looking for here? Our baseball structure, how it is like we're teaching and we're also coaching. So for me, I got my master's degree, so God rest his soul, my old head coach that I think the world of always told me, he goes, Ange, you may have to teach. And I never had to. And then I started, and then I was like, thank God I have this. Because as we get older, for all you young people out there that are listening, if you can get your master's degree early or higher education early, do it. Because you fall in love with the sport, and it's like we're a player all over again. So the middle end of August when school starts is when I start teaching, and then recruiting starts basically like 2 weeks into it. As far as like the hot and heavy, when all the teams get together, the junior colleges come, and like I said, we're a very heavy junior college recruited school. So with that being said, I mean then it's the grind starts. As far as the boys are concerned, man, they come back. They got hell week, man. As soon as they get back, their beach bodies and all the fun that they had over the summers, those days are gone. And every year they all tell me, Coach, I'm in shape. I'm going to tell Coach Alani, I'm in shape, man. I'm in shape, dude. He's not going to wear me out. And after the first couple of days, they're like, man, we're older, we're more physical. And I'm like, Coach, man, he just keeps kicking the crap out of us. And I'm like, I thought you guys were in shape. Because my lifting days are over. I mean, I go for my runs. This is the time of year I'll usually go golfing once a week, or at least go to the range, I hope, anyway. And, it's a little bit of an easier time. I try to give myself a couple hours of free time a week. But like you're always doing something. I mean, it may not be a grind in a studio, or it may not be a grind over a webcast or something like that, but you're still doing your stuff, right? So, I have my follow list from the year before, from the freshmen that I've already seen. I'll reach out and say hello and just introduce myself. Obviously, we can't sign them until the next calendar year starts. And that's basically how it works. I mean, there's, like every other job, like, Ryan, when you own the business and it means something personal to you, you have to take it personal. And as far as coaching, it falls on this. The wins and loss will always fall on any head coach, no matter where you're at. But it's like if you own a studio, right, and you're doing your stuff, but you have other guys working under you. If I'm not very good at my job, or I insult people, or if I'm not doing a really good job, hey, you own the studio, it falls on you, and there will be a conversation about it. So, yeah, it's the fun, exciting, crazy, wild part of the business.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, this was a great conversation, man. I'm glad that we had a chance to catch up before you head over to the family business, get to making some pizzas and everything else. Maybe I'll
You
stop in and
should.
see if you're in there and come for a slice or something like that. But like I said, I really appreciate it. I'm glad that that we had a chance to catch up. Good luck next year, and hopefully you get a chance to kind of relax a little bit, enjoy the family, and not when you're behind the
Yeah.
counter covered in pizza dough and flour, right? So enjoy the time and have a safe travels back when you got to head back to Valdosta, and we'll definitely catch up at some point soon.
Thank you,
And
man. Thank
feel
you.
good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Athletes to Athletes podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. To engage with everything the A2A platform has to offer, go to the App Store and search Athletes to Athletes to download our new app. You can check out our educational material, and you'll ensure that you don't miss when a new episode of the A2A podcast drops. Again, thank you for listening. We'll see you again next time.